Hey everybody, welcome to the TEConnect podcast. I'm John Martin.
And I'm Dean Reverman.
Dean, we're back to talking the EV charging talk.
Oh, we are?
Yeah.
Yes.
But this time we got someone who also walks the walk.
What do you mean walks the walk?
That actually is out there in the EV business and doing the work.
Like has a business in it?
Talking it up.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
We got Jeff Smith, who you might remember being on the pod multiple times about the government space in general, and he's still in that space.
Yes.
But he's also leaned in on the EV charging side of a new company called EVerged.
Nice.
Which, by the way, I do want to point out, Jeff, and we'll talk maybe more about this later. There's too many vowels. In the name.
For a startup.
Yeah, he hasn't taken all the vowels out yet. So
clearly, he's not trying to get any funding from
I guess,
VC
yeah, maybe a little marketing tip there. So
Jeff's a great guy. This is clearly going to be a great conversation because he knows his stuff.
Yep, he's going to get into his extensive experience in the public sector. With this kind of technology, where this fits in. We're going to talk about the opportunities out there for EV charging, why he jumped in on this and really felt the need to lean into it.
Gotcha.
We're going to talk about the other side of his business, which is renewable and sustainable energy as well, which is connected to the EV topic. And we'll talk about some stuff that actually has been going on in the government, how it's going to affect this whole thing. And then he's also even going to give us a little insight into what's happening in the world of government too.
Nice.
We're getting Jeff to cover all the bases.
Jeez Louise, do we have time for all this?
We're going to make time.
We do now.
I mean, again, as always, this podcast can run as long as we feel like.
That's true.
It's
ours, and we don't have Marco here,
That's
so
true.
he can't give us the annoying, wrap it up sign.
Exactly. Yeah,
Jeff, we're cleared hot for a long conversation.
All right, let's do it.
There you go. All that plus our usual value to the VAR. What's TEConnecting with us? It's time to plug in and get connected.
Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. It's time to get connected.
All right, as I mentioned, our guest today is Jeff Smith.
Yes.
He is nowadays the CEO of EVerged. Or do we say it's EVerged that I was supposed to say it, right?
Correct.
All right,
Yes.
but that's a capital EV because they're leaning on the. Now, I will give you that. I know I gave you the a little crap about the vowels, but you are doing the clever thing with the EV as part of the name, so I think it still counts as a clever startup name. So.
Otherwise, if you and I had done this, we would have taken at least one of these E's out.
Yeah. Probably. I'd say that middle one, so it'd be like EVRG, or maybe even maybe the second one too. I don't know. Yeah. Everybody thinks that's a cool thing to do these days, but I appreciate the vowels. As a man who does a lot of writing and appreciates good writing and full sentences and full words, I appreciate that. So, Jeff, welcome.
We're not quite ready for Wheel of Fortune yet.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. That's
there
right.
You go. So welcome back on the show. That we are glad to have you back. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and get into this because this will kind of set the stage of a little bit of what you've been up to, obviously, which is what we typically do in our banter at the beginning. But we've been talking about EV charging for a little while now. We had a whole podcast about it, I think, last year with Ben Simon.
Yep.
So, it's been top of mind for us. It's an initiative that BlueStar is leaning heavily into ourselves. But it is nice to see an industry vet like yourself that's really getting into it and committing to it as well. So tell us more about that. What inspired you to start EVerged and really lean into this technology and make it part of a platform that you are going out and getting in front of folks about too?
Yeah, it's a great question. The market opportunity is so incredibly dynamic. I grew up in the telecom and wireless side starting in the early 90s and saw, that market just explode into what it is today, where nobody can function without a wireless device. And candidly, the dynamics of this market and the growth opportunities to me are there's no comparison to even something that was exponentially opportunistic as the wireless market. So we're excited about the market. We also got really excited because we learned the market. We studied the market very, very closely before we entered it. And we looked for some of the things that weren't working and weren't making people successful. And fortunately, a lot of the best practices that we had from the parent company and some of the solutions we provided at the enterprise level for public sector agencies very much translated over into this business. So it's really those two key things: the sheer market opportunity that's out there for us from a timing standpoint, and the fact that many of our core capabilities translated very well into this market and helped fix or fix some of the chronic issues that have made people not successful as they've endeavored.
So let's talk about that market opportunity real quick. Just to get, I guess, some numbers behind it. The market has a 35% compound annual growth rate. Okay, so how many things? I love Kegers. I throw them around like I'm whatever. I just invent them, but I don't. These come from people that know their stuff. Yes. But when you have something that's growing 35%, I mean and that might be conservative. I don't know, but it's saying it's going to be this industry of EV charging stations market will be worth $115 billion by 2028. By the way, it's currently at $18 billion, so it's going to go from 18 to 115 billion in about 4 years. And so, Jeff, I guess that's kind of some of the opportunity you're talking about, right, brother? That's about $100 billion in 4 years of opportunity right there.
We'll take most of it, right? Yeah, that's a McKinsey Group study, and the numbers every year. Last year, it was 20% forecast CAGR. McKinsey's revised their market forecast, and they follow the market as closely as anybody, to 35%, Dean, as you pointed out. And we continue to see year in and year out the numbers and the growth numbers and the projections increase. And nothing that we followed in the last 2 years from projection standpoint has been missed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's some talk about EVs maybe not getting quite as much sales out there. Maybe we can comment on that a little bit. Some of the goals were fairly lofty. Some of the initiatives out there put some, really high-level goals, I guess, for lack of a better way to say it, around EVs that maybe were a little bit unrealistic. But even if you take modest, which they're still growing, and there's modesty in those numbers, the amount of catch-up, I guess I would say, or the need for the charging station to kind of get up to par with the amount of sales that are out there. I don't know, Jeff, maybe give me the inside baseball there. Is that contributing to this CAGR in the sense that we've heard that the infrastructure is not quite where it needs to be in order to support the EV volume in vehicles that is here and coming? Is that a true statement, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's in the industry, it's called range anxiety. Do I purchase a vehicle if my commute is, greater than or close to what the range of a battery would be, when obviously combustion engines have a lot more access to refueling than electric vehicles do at this point. But I do think it's interesting when you look at this and the growth numbers that 21 new models will come out this year from major manufacturers. And I believe that has as much to do with kind of the little bit of the plateau we saw in the middle of the market last year, along with some of the other economic conditions where many people, I think, are waiting for this next generation of vehicles. And it's exciting, the innovation that's going to come with those 21 new models from the major automobile manufacturers. But yes, range anxiety, access to public charging, the understanding the consumer charge and how that happens at home, all those things contribute a little bit, I think, in the buying process for a consumer or a business or a fleet for an electric vehicle. However, when you look at the growth and you look at the opportunities that we're supporting and seeing in the market, just being in Toronto last week, over 5,000 electric fleet vehicles being bought in and around Toronto by municipalities, with transitions happening between now and 2028. Just all the indicators are incredibly positive.
So when you think about it, maybe you can give us a little insight into the world of charging stations. So I saw another statistic around who owns charging station networks. And there's quite a few companies out there. I don't want to call it the Wild West, but it does seem like there's a lot of movement as far as companies getting in. You have large networks like Tesla, for example, one of the larger networks that's bespoke for their models, but you have other players out there that have networks. Is that where you're going with the company, or are you just a provider to these network services? Or help us maybe understand that world a little bit, if you would.
Yeah, the great answer to that question is we're agnostic. We're what works for the market, right? So If the commercial property owner or end user wants to purchase the chargers as a capital church purchase and get in the business of EV charging, we certainly have that option. We also provide charge as a service so that our end users and site hosts can perform, and buy chargers the way they are consuming IT now, strictly as a service, right? And then the third are where we're the owner operator and it becomes a part of our network. They outsource the model and we share in the charge revenue in return for access to the site for a 10-year period. So one of the things we think we fixed when we looked at the market is we give people viable options, end users and commercial property owners, three viable options as to how they want to get into this market. Now, behind that, about 80% of the sites that we'll develop this year, and we're going to deploy over 500 chargers this year in North America. We're going to develop over 120 sites this year in North America. About 80% of those are where we're the owner operator in conjunction with the commercial property owner, mainly because a charger for a hotel or a sportsplex or a large municipality is an incredibly non-traditional purchase, right? And they're used to purchasing other things, and they're leveraging our expertise to purchase, deploy, and manage the charger throughout the performance life cycle.
I love it. Thank you for that answer, because that is it. That's the differentiator from allowing a network provider to come in and maybe utilize the real estate. There's no reason. What Jeff just outlined is a reason for the owners of these properties, the owners of these entities, to be able to participate. He's got 3 different models that you can participate in. So you don't need this other provider coming in, garnering all the opportunities on the revenue side, maybe having suspect quality control. There's a lot of those types of issues as well. So brilliant. Thank you, Jeff, for kind of clarifying that, because if you were an owner of, some gas stations or retail establishments in, the area of Cincinnati, you've got choices, right? You could allow some of these other networks to try to swoop in and contractually take up or you could work with somebody like a Jeff. It's going to be much more advantageous. He's got 3 flexible models that can work around your business, and what would be the best solution there. Am I wrong, Jeff? That's why you're coming to the market this way, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And we saw that the market was very swim lane oriented from a choice standpoint, and that the offerings were not as diverse as ours. And again, the lens that we look through is how are we successful where other people have failed. The other important thing behind that is, regardless of the purchasing model or the consumption model, the service model is the same, right? And so we're going to ensure that the chargers that we install, regardless of the purchasing model, are serviced, maintained, and taken care of from a quality standpoint, regardless of how the end user purchases from us. That was another thing that we saw is very broken in the market. We saw in the high 60s, low 70s uptime for chargers. Imagine experience that in the petroleum world, right? And that's not acceptable. And it's not going to allow the growth numbers that you talked about earlier, Dean. So the second layer, if you peel back the layers of why we entered this market and why we think it's different, is the service model for the charger from an expectation and uptime standpoint is the same regardless of how it's purchased from us.
And one last thing, because John, I know you're moving on to other questions.
No, you're fine. This is all great stuff.
What I think, Jeff, I want to probe a little bit here. I know one of the questions we're going to throw at you here towards the end is around, government and some of the rules that are coming down and some of the new, legislation and things of that nature. But before we get into that, can you just paint a picture? Because I think you're a bit of a unicorn. You, like your company, is a bit of a unicorn in that you understand government. You understand how it works in some of the operations. Is it, I don't want to misquote, but I think your other company has been involved in, is it $22 billion worth of government, programs and things of that nature? So you guys know what you're doing when it relates to government. The government is driving a lot of this adoption through some of that. So, just talk a little bit about how that's trickling through. This is getting all the way down to municipalities, local governments, not just the Fed, right? Am I correct in this? I mean, there are incentives and things. Could you just speak on the incentives and some of those things that are kind of driving some of the market?
Yeah, absolutely. And the trickle down, as you described, is real. So the programs at the highest level start with two major entitlements that are funded in the 11 to 12 billion range. One is called NEVI, which is building out interstate corridors across the country and being overseen by state Department of Transportations. The other is called CAFI, which is complementary to NEVI, where it's building out rural corridors and rural regions that won't have access to that funding. And then behind that, you look at so many of the major municipalities that have sustainability initiatives. Everything from zero carbon to all electric fleets by 2030. Many of the state and local initiatives follow the federal mandates, right? So the federal mandates have definitely trickled down to state and local. And then the federal mandates and those around $12 billion in funding is going to allow a lot of public private partnership for charger build out in conjunction with all of these sustainability initiatives that our major municipalities are driving, like New York City, like City of San Diego, like Toronto, like the city of Los Angeles, right? And we're front and center in all those, including being awarded the city of San Diego's EV public partner private ship to develop 200 sites with them as a public private partnership. And that is a very large part of their sustainability plan for the overall city, right? Which, to your point earlier, is a result of a lot of the federal mandates and funding trickling down into local entities from an execution and funding standpoint.
Jeff, I appreciate that you mentioned the sustainability part because that kind of dovetails into the next part of what we want to talk about here a little bit, which is EVerged is not just focused on the chargers themselves, but also on the idea of renewable and sustainable energy alongside those chargers. So talk to us a little about that and what I think you guys call it the energy nirvana. Give us a little bit of understanding of what that is. I just think that's a cool name.
Right. As a marketer, the energy nirvana.
That's right.
Well, kind of like when the three of us get together, we're all happy, right? Everyone's happy in a nirvana, right? So thank you for pointing out the naming. So as we said earlier, we're capital EV EVerged, and the EV part of our name is the solution integration business for EV chargers that we've been talking about so far on the podcast. The urged part of EVerged is converging renewable energy sources into, and this is our aspiration, grid positive to grid neutral outcomes. There are 11 viable forms of renewable energy. The typical ones that you see the most deployed today are wind and solar. Those get some traction, but not enough traction to move us to a situation where converged renewable energy can be a mini grid, a microgrid, or even a macro grid that creates, again, overall grid positive to neutral outcomes, right? And so we looked at, where we are today. We've started as an EV solution integration company. Over time, we aspire to be the largest converged renewable energy provider in the world. And behind that, we're very excited to announce that we have a major customer and project in Southern California where we will be creating a converged renewable energy grid that will take a property right around the Ontario airport that is larger, has more square miles than Disneyland's property. And over the next 3 years, our goal, along with the property development group, is to create a renewable energy grid that takes the entire property's operations off the macro grid. And so we're really excited about it. And what we've also found is we believe that not only are wind and solar right now, there's some emerging technologies that make it a lot more approachable and a lot more efficient, but battery storage technologies have also drastically come down in price and come down and gone up in capability. And then the last thing, when you look at it like a clean slate, and we're looking at geo, we're looking at hydro, we're looking at micronuclear, we're looking at anything that we can take from a property standpoint that makes sense to converge and create energy. Magno Electric, we think, has a very high potential from a development standpoint because it's perpetual energy. And so the idea of EVerged is over time, we'll converge renewable energy sources. Chargers will most always be a part of that, right? We initially thought of the concept of EVerged for underserved markets, for markets that were grid constrained or grid, not even grid aware or grid have access to a real grid. And solving those problems to take pressure off the grid as we deploy chargers. Then we've realized with our research, development, and intellectual property that we've put together, and a wonderful world-class team of companies like ABB and Honeywell coming together for our solution, and Honda Energy, that there is an opportunity for us to do something from a sustainability standpoint that we don't believe anybody in the market is even thinking about.
Well, I can see that. You're already downstream on some of these things. So just so that I understand, that's awesome. So even just from the EV angle, some of the issues are that, it has an impact on the grid, right? So, all these charging stations that are going to be deployed, and that's what you hear, the nightmare scenarios. You've already got rolling brownouts in California. So when you're adding, hundreds of thousands of vehicles that are trying to tie in, well, now you've got grid issues, right? That requires upgrades and things of that nature. So if I am understanding correctly, Jeff, what you're doing though with EVerged, and the verged part is creating these microgrids, right? That's your word, where it's a self-sustaining, not just for the EV, but also for the businesses and or other entities that might be around there. If I frame that correctly?
Oh, you absolutely have. That is absolutely the concept and the outcome, the business outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about it, the way it will work is, at worst, we'll do energy arbitrage. So let's take a deployment in Carson, California of 200 chargers. We put in an energy nirvana, converge renewable energy sources. Let's say this property has 3, right? Those 3 sources will continually feed our high capacity battery storage. And the first sessions of charges that happen the next day will come from converged renewable energy. Then if we need to renew the batteries after the converged renewable energy supply runs out, we can do that from the grid at a time of arbitrage or off peak, where the grid is the least taxed, right? So our software platform is going to enable us to steer the different energy loads that come into the batteries, and then also optimize if we do and when we do, because we will, as the product develops, we are going to be relying on the grid over time. We want to get to grid neutral and grid positive, but our other plan is that we want to be as evasively neutral as positive when we do take energy from the grid, by taking it at off-peak times when the grid is not taxed, right? Say it's 1 to 4 in the morning, right? So we've got converged renewable energy, then we have energy arbitrage. And when we are on the grid, we're trying to create the least evasive outcome against the power we utilize from the grid. And if we do that, again, this is why we call it energy nirvana. Everybody's happy. The utility's happy. Our end user are happy. The chargers are happy. The batteries are full, right? And we're leveraging natural resources to help our customers and municipalities hit their sustainability goals.
I got it. Now I can visualize it. When you pull up to a gas station, it's not like in you're gassing up your car. It's not like you have a direct line to the refinery, right? Which is the analogous of charging a car. Like you're tapped into the power station. Right. So Jeff, what I'm visualizing is, under the ground at gas stations, everybody's seen them. There are the big tanks, right? That the tanker comes in. So you're saying you're using renewable energy and things of that nature to quote unquote fill the tank, which is the battery that's on site. That's what's charging those, and then they can be refreshed either on off-peak times or brilliant. Good stuff. Yeah, that is nirvana. I understand now.
It is. Everybody wins. Everybody's happy.
Yeah, I love this because I feel like, when we talk about the electric conversation, we forget about the forgotten part of it, which is, okay, yes, the idea of moving to electric vehicles is that we want to get away from, from the emissions. We want to get away from the reliance on fossil fuels and all that stuff. Great stuff. But shifting over to electric might just mean like, well, what if you're just grabbing electric that has also been created by fossil fuels? And, I mean, I get in some ways you're still making an improvement, but you're also still relying on potentially harmful sources of energy.
Well, it's incremental growth, but go ahead,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I appreciate that you're looking at that side and saying like, well, all right, but let's make sure this is an entirely closed loop where we're ensuring that every piece of this angle of not just you having the electric vehicle, but where the energy is coming from that you're now using to create that electricity for your vehicle is also clean and sustainable and renewable and affordable. So, I mean, to me, this is a nirvana because you guys have thought this through. I mean, I appreciate that, you didn't just go out there and be like, hey, we just want a piece of this EV charging thing. Yeah. You have thought
more
through some of the angles.
Solution. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And to your point also, where you can talk to these people and tell them like, hey, we want to do this, but there's a reason we want to do this, and there's extra steps we're going to take to make sure that this is going in the sustainability direction that everybody wants these days, and that, and especially on the government levels and and a lot of corporate levels where you can help them understand like, hey, we're making a difference not just in giving you options to charge EVs, but also in, again, becoming a bigger part of the renewable, sustainable future that we're all trying to achieve here.
Yeah.
So
fascinating.
Jeff, it really is. I think so. Jeff, let's talk a little bit. Dean, you already mentioned earlier, there's a little bit of the government, part of this whole situation. And that they're kind of the ones really trying to push us forward. And I appreciate that because, sometimes you need a little shove to get us in the right direction. So the Biden admin just recently put out this new tailpipe rule, which is, its basic design is to push forward a majority of new consumer and light duty vehicles to be either electric or hybrid by 2032. Now, to your point earlier, that might be a bit of a lofty goal. And I think, and Jeff, you already kind of succinctly put earlier how all of the government and local initiatives or whatever, the public sector stuff is kind of helping drive this as it is. So let me kind of pivot this question a little bit into a couple things. One, obviously it's an election year, and we know that can have an impact on whether people choose to adopt something. If they're thinking like, well, if this admin that wants to do this might be on their way out, should we bother messing with this right now? Is this not going to be a rule in the future? But also, and Dean, you kind of alluded to this earlier too, the market itself for EVs feels like it's kind of in a weird egress at the moment where, you're getting some of the major manufacturers that suggest they might be pulling back on their EV production. Tesla's had its own share of, missteps and bad press and stuff like that. It kind of feels like people are changing their attitudes about EV in some way. Do you see this as being an issue right now? Are we looking at potentially a slow period, or is this maybe the perfect time to be jumping on all of this because it is just a slight downturn maybe that's going to burst back the other way soon?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, John. And, I look at it where there's challenge, there's opportunity. And this is where our clean slate approach to this market, being in it around 2.5 years, working with BlueStar so carefully to figure out how to best enter this market in a way that would be successful where others have failed. I see it as real opportunity. And when we were out in Toronto at the North American EV Expo this last week, we talked to hundreds of people, and our message resonated with them, especially Energy Nirvana for some of the larger fleet deployments that were up there. And I think the reason that there has been some stops and starts, right, from a technology standpoint and from a market standpoint, is because there's a lot of the industry as it started that was broken, right? They took, if you look at, the chargers today, even, it's a good reflection of kind of how people did not look at the market with a clean slate. Why did we decide to make chargers that look like gas pumps? They're not gas pumps.
That's a good point.
Right? And some of them look like Star Wars creatures at best, right? We just had May the 4th. So why aren't, the electric vehicles are futuristic and have emerging technology look and feel to them. Why don't chargers? Well, because people looked at this industry like it was the petroleum industry. It's not. It's completely different. There's a completely different set of success factors and things that have to come together from an integration standpoint for a charger to work and be operational than for a gas pump. But the industry looked back when they started to create the momentum around the products and services we see in the market. We look back to see how people were failing and built the model that we built today that we're bullish on, that will capitalize on these challenges and turn them into opportunities for our customers.
I think when you hear some of the numbers that are thrown around, around like Tesla missing or whatever, it's almost insignificant relative to the overall picture. So, how many registered vehicles do you think there are in the United States?
Oh, geez,
it's 286 million.
I was going to say, what's the U.S. population?
Exactly. So, and Tesla sales in 2022, 354,000. So less than. What is that? 0.3% of
drop
vehicles.
In a bucket kind of.
So yeah. So if they're 50,000 cars off, or if they're 20,000, it's a big number for Tesla. But the reality is, and I think that's what Jeff's kind of pointing to, that even the projections in 2024 that there would be a right around 1 million vehicles sold. Well, in 2024, which is again still only whatever is that? 30th of a percent of the sale of the registered cars that will be in the U.S. But that's a lot of opportunity out there. Yeah. And when you think about, because we talked about this when Ben was on, and too, it's like, what kind of an opportunity do you have to be where Shell Oil was, in the turn of the last century, where there were no gas stations, there were no, and all this infrastructure needed to be built out. Well, there's an opportunity there. Yeah.
Well, I completely agree. I was kind of playing devil's advocate a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because I do honestly feel like there is that perception. You're starting to see these stories about the EV market it's not really going to go where people think it is.
Yeah.
But look,
it will.
I mean, at some point it will. Like I hate to say it, but it's just like the days of gas vehicles being the dominant ones are going to end. And it may not be quite as quickly as we would have predicted or people hopefully thought it would happen. Mm-hmm. It's still going to happen. I don't see any. This is not one of those things where I feel like we just turn back and go like, nah, never mind. Let's just scrap this and go all the way back again.
Yeah, right.
We're going to make that move forward. I think, if anything, right now, maybe we're in a little bit of a lull and a calm before the storm, which again is, we preach about this all the time, it can be the best time to get yourself in on something where you can become an expert ahead of time. Maybe not everybody is receptive to it yet, but you keep talking up and you're having enough conversations about it. You're partnering up with an EVerged and bringing them on with you to have these conversations. When people are ready for this, when this does explode the way it probably will over sometime in the next decade, there's going to be a lot more. People are hopefully going to look at you and say, hey, you know what? They've been over there talking about this for a couple of years now. Even when I thought it wasn't even going to be a thing, I should probably go talk to them because they seem like they're already on top of it.
Hey Jeff, let's probe. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have a comment on that? Go ahead.
I just wanted to comment on that. So Europe is now past 25% of the registered vehicles on the road are EVs. There's a belief that in Asia that about 50% of the vehicles that are fleet are EVs. So globally, this is moving very fast, and we've seen technology, globally proliferate quicker than it does in the United States, and then the United States, tends to be a fast follower. The other thing I would ask you and tell you that the reason the electrified train has left the station, tell me a Mercedes, a Honda, a Kia, a Ford, a Chevy. Tell me any commercial you saw from the Super Bowl back that is not the EV platform as the featured part of the advertisement. There's 60% less components in EV. The life cycle management is about 40% less for the automobile manufacturers. These are profit, not money makers, profit makers for the automobile industry. And 21 new models coming out this year. So my point is that yes, we may have treaded water a little bit, but when you look at what's happening globally and you look at, I'll tell you where we were. Last year, we were under development for 27 sites. This year, we're up to 117. So, last year we were doing 2 or 3 major RFPs a month. This year, we're doing probably 8 or 10. So the market is moving, and we may have treaded the water a little bit, but turn on the TV and see if you see anything about a combustion engine in an ad or any sustainability. Look at the current waste management campaigns that are out there on advertisement. Sustainability and EV is about 90% of the advertising you see now from corporate America.
Yeah,
That's a great point.
Jeff, can we probe a little bit? Your company, EVerged, are they helpful, or do you still help other resellers who are interested in finding opportunities and working with them?
We do. You know, Dean, we just left the VarMed Executive Summit in Phoenix, which was a wonderful success. We've signed up 3 resellers from that as master sales agents with us. And so we very much are looking to build out and continue to build out our master sales agent program. So we have a program that allows a sales agent to share in the commission and charge revenue of the referrals that they bring to us, and then they can leverage our services turnkey. And or if they want a team on an opportunity, whether it be public or private sector, and the investment that we've done in this market and the maturity level that we have now enables their success, we are 1,000% interested in that.
The reason, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, so we're excited to help anybody that wants to get into this industry. If they have a referral base or a customer base that's interested, you know, sign up on our master sales agent agreement, and we'll support the win and pay them commission.
Now, the reason I'm bringing that up is because, just to kind of tie some of this stuff together, obviously the government is incentivizing first move, right? I mean, they want people to start adopting this technology. Jeff's background is understanding how government grants, government bids work. So he can speak the speak, talk the talk, walk the walk, and understands how to get those dollars, because again, that's the upfront investments coming from the government in a lot of ways, and then the rest of the market's going to come. Obviously, Jeff's well positioned to do that, but that's why I wanted to ask if there are resellers out there that are going to be confused about how to get into this. Jeff can help. So Jeff, let's talk a little bit about how do you go after some of those dollars, right? I mean, you guys are very adept at understanding grants. Is it, paint a little bit of a picture of how the money is moving through the government to enable these, installations, right? You mentioned NEVI, you mentioned is it cafe or whatever.
CFI.
Right. Okay. I mean, those are real dollars, right? And that's getting into the hands of localities. So you got to know the purchasing director, or not the purchase. You know the world better than I do. I'll just stop. You need to know that world a little bit, though, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's important to follow the money, and their programs with the Department of Energy, their programs with the, Economic Development Agency, their programs with the EPA outside of NEVI and CAFE, their state programs. There's even utility programs where utilities see, the more kilowatts the more chargers I get, the more kilowatts and meters I bill, right? So this is a whole nother huge business opportunity for the utilities, even though some of the utilities aren't exactly thrilled with the energy nirvana concept in some ways, even though it is a good thing for them. So yes, you want to follow that money. We follow it all the time. One of the things that we believe is a real differentiator is we have an automated grants identification tool that we've leveraged for years with the parent. And so when we scope a site, we run the site address through the tool, and it identifies any grants, rebates, incentives that are available per site. And we include that as a part of the ROI analysis for deploying an EV charging solution on your site. But yes, it's very important. I was just down in Richmond a couple of weeks ago working with a local economic development agency that's received an EDA grant, an economic development agency grant, for an innovation center. And so, there's all kinds of ways to bring this technology to market. And the nice thing about what we're doing in the renewable energy space is there's 7 key emerging technologies that the EDA is supporting bringing to market through the Inflation Reduction Act and through the CHIPS Act and so many of the things. President Biden has given us over $1 trillion in entitlements to rebuild America, right? It's not talked about a lot, but those are some of the big programs behind it. And because what we do, covers 3 or 4 of those emerging technologies, we should be able, and we have been able, to identify grant funding and programs that our master sales agents can take advantage of when they bring them to us, or we can take advantage of on behalf of our customer by having a more competitive offering because it's being subsidized by a grant. And we do win about 70 to 80% of the grants we pursue. So we do have a really good history.
That's a great batting average.
No doubt.
Yeah. I wish the Reds had that kind of a batting average. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, my Braves aren't doing so great either.
I'd take half of it at this point.
Right,
yeah.
But anyway, my point is that yes, that is a big part of it. And grabbing the entitlement funding, understanding what program and incentive funding there is for each site location you're developing, and then claiming those, we have all those capabilities as a part of what we do.
It's just an untapped world that obviously, if you can't tell, that's what Jeff's expertise and his company are bringing to the table with intellectual property through the tool sets that they can recognize. It's just that's cool stuff, right? But that's helping enable all this stuff. Look, it doesn't matter where you land politically if you agree or disagree. The fact is, the dollars are there, things are moving forward, so you might as well take some of the opportunity.
Jump in on it,
right?
yeah.
There you
Involved
go.
there. And I appreciate also. Go ahead, Jeff.
No, I apologize. No, I'll tell you a fun one. So it's a great example of what Dean just said. Is 2 weeks ago we turned in a $15 million concept paper for the Department of Energy for cybersecurity. Well, how is all this cybersecurity? Well, EV chargers connect to a network, and then chargers through the infrastructure connect to the grid. What if all that's not secure, right? So we just recently applied for, and I feel like we'll be successful with, a Department of Energy grant for cybersecurity to ensure that we develop a connectivity platform that is safe as for both vehicles and chargers to connect to the grid. Now that's an adjacent funding opportunity, but one that we're really excited about developing so that when our network does proliferate across the globe, we can say that it has a zero attack service, that it is the most secure, that it is Department of Energy endorsed. And that's the type of funding we go after, not just the direct funding like NEVI that is specifically for charger build out, but the adjacent funding for all the technologies that have to feed this growth, right? So it's not just the EV charging technology and solution integration and sustainability. It's all the technologies also around them, right, that enable the security posture, the interactivity and interconnectivity, and also, the behind the meter, activity that happens between the meter and the grid, right? All those adjacent technologies are important, and those are being funded, right?
Good stuff.
Seriously, you guys have thought of everything.
Right.
I mean, you've covered all the angles. You've thought of everything. The giant energy companies are a little upset and annoyed by it, which tells me that you're disrupting and you're moving in an interesting direction.
All this and Jeff has an electrical engineering degree over the no, I'm just kidding. He's an electrophysicist or something like that, right? You wouldn't have never guessed, I guess, 10 years ago that you would know this much about batteries and charging and stuff like that, right?
No doubt.
And we've gotten a PhD in this market, and we really didn't come into it we came into it as a fresh set of eyes, and all we came into it to do was to learn, right? And then once we learned the market, right, we built a strategy. And I think a lot of other people built their strategy and then tried to force it on the market. And we really took an inverse approach on how we came to market through BlueStar. I mean, we wouldn't be here without BlueStar.
Yeah, good stuff.
No doubt. Yeah. Well, before we jump over into the VAR value side and let Jeff share some more of his general government wisdom with us for folks this year, I want to, as always, thank our sponsors here on the TEConnect podcast. Those who sponsor the pod directly, as well as our TEConnect program. Hey, if you like the show, you need to let us know in one way or another, whether it's if you're watching the video on YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, leave a comment for us. Give us a 5-star rating and review on any kind of podcast platform that you currently use.
Only 5 stars.
Only 5 stars. Yes,
of course.
If you feel the need to do less, reach out first and tell us what's taking that extra star away.
Right, yeah.
And we'll looking to see if we need to address something.
That's fair.
But
that's fair. Yes.
Before you do that, just talk to us first. We appreciate constructive feedback.
Yeah.
But hold off.
Will
on
we
that,
give them a
negative
T-shirt for the
review.
constructive criticism too? Yeah, why
Sure,
not?
why not? Yeah.
We got
Which,
T-shirts.
again, I know I keep talking about this. I officially have started compiling some of the folks that have already been
requested
T-shirts.
Yes, yes.
So we can start getting those printed up and get
man,
some
you
out
got a
there to
list.
those
You got a
folks.
list,
I
brother.
do.
You got to work
But
it.
if you want to make that list,
Ah.
like Dean said, you got to
Yes.
give us some feedback.
There you go.
Leave us a nice review. Send us some ideas for the show, what you would like to hear about on the show. Maybe something Jeff said sparked another rabbit hole topic for you, just like us to dig a little further into. You can pull him back on or bring someone else on to talk about that. But you got to send us those ideas, and you get a T-shirt in exchange. Plus, your idea may end up on the show, and you learn something, and find some business and opportunities. I mean,
Oh darn.
that's probably worth more than the T-shirt, honestly. Right. But so that's a good reason alone right there to send those ideas to us. So as always, you can find us on BlueStar's LinkedIn page, or you can email us directly at any time, TEConnect@bluestarinc.com. All right, let's wrap things up, starting with a little VAR value here. And as I mentioned, obviously Jeff's expertise and been on the show before has been about the government space in general, what to look out for. So I figured, hey, we can't have him on here without letting him tap a little bit back into that and tell us what's happening in the world of government. So what's going on out there right now, Jeff? Is there anything VAR should be looking out for? Any new opportunities, anything, around this election cycle or some of these, government programs that are out there laying around waiting for someone to come tap into the funding? What should people be looking out for?
Gosh, it's a great question, and it's a big answer, right? The budget is in place. The federal budget is in place through continuing resolution through September 30. So we have a budget, and that's a good thing. We also have some political posturing for some senators that probably likely are ending their tenure here in November, some of which had very esteemed and long tenures in the Senate. So there's some congressional legislative transition. I think behind that, we're going to see some earmark funding. We're going to see some friendly entitlement funding done. I think that you'll see the administration push through some more entitlement funding to support their agenda and to show their success going into the election year. What I would say is I think there's less uncertainty about the government spending and the government funding than is typical in an election year. So stay focused, right? Don't let your customer, your sales organization, or even the government end users tell you it's an election year. Well, yes, it is, but the funding's in place, and a lot of the entitlement programs aren't going to go away, even if there is an administration change, and those monies have to be spent in future rounds. So agencies should be planning for that, right? So I would say stay focused. Don't let an election year distract you from a sales standpoint in public sector. And then also we'll get to the TEConnecting part, which is always one of my favorite parts of our podcast, but look towards some of the emerging technologies like AI as opportunities, because there's so many different emerging technologies that are starting to proliferate the government faster than ever, right? The as a service, and I'm a big believer that both platform as a service and software as a service, the Fed cloud certifications around those types of offerings, are allowing government to experience innovation in a more rapid pace than they ever have. And they're also allowing less integration because they're many times a standalone niche solution that can function as platform or software as a service. So be vigilant with your customers. Don't use the election year excuse. Don't let your salespeople use that. Go out and sell. We have a budget, and then start having the emerging technology discussions with your clients, your government, public sector end users, because there more and more and more emerging technologies are under consideration for budget and procurement actions.
Good stuff.
There you go.
Yep.
Definitely appreciate that. And also, hey, you mentioned some of the senators that may be on their way out that have been long tenured. Maybe we get some new folks in that are a little more tech savvy, a little.
Oh, that would be nice.
Maybe a little younger, maybe a little more, interested in new technologies and moving forward with some stuff. That might be a good thing for us too.
Maybe just a little.
So keep your ear to the ground there, and again, to Jeff's point, just because it's an election year doesn't mean there's not stuff to get out there and do right now.
Oh my God, yeah, for sure.
All right, well, Dean, do you have anything else to add on that point?
Nope.
All right, well then let's wrap up as always with what's tech connecting with you, our favorite segment. We could talk about anything in the world of tech, innovation, science, business, discovery, just something we feel like chatting about. Jeff, you hinted AI's a little bit on a tech connecting with you, but what else you got? What's tech connecting with you right now?
Well, you see the XAI. You see that Elon's recently said they're an AI and robotics company, and if you're not interested in investing in that, then he's not interested in your investment dollar, basically. So, they've also said, recently that with the XAI platform that they're bringing to market, that once that technology is developed, it could be the last time that humans invent.
Interesting.
The last time that humans invent.
It's a bold statement.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's a pretty bold statement. So that's one of the things. But I always like to bring something new and exciting. And so one of the companies that we're working with, or in the early process of working with, that we found is a company called Horizon Aircraft. We met them in Toronto at the EV Expo. And Horizon Aircraft is a hybrid plane. It has a fan system like a drone, almost a whole bunch of drone fan systems that do vertical lift and then take off. And they're early in development. But the goal for the plane is to go from hybrid to all electric. And it's really, really an exciting thought process to realize that in this EV market, it's not just the EV vehicle, right? The consumer vehicle. It's a commercial vehicle. It's commercial aircraft. It's personal aircraft. It's the yachting industry, right? The Pershing just came out with the first gigawatt yacht battery. And I think it's a 160-meter yacht that was just released. So these technologies, what's tech connecting with me? Not just that all those folks need energy nirvanas and chargers, but that when you look at people like Horizon Aircraft, when you look at Pershing, when you look at everything that we saw, Zambonis, we're in the NHL playoffs. Do you know there's now an EV Zamboni?
Did not know that.
Wow, that's awesome.
What? Yeah.
Right? Yeah, Zamboni, that's been around since the 40s, has an all EV Zamboni now. And so what's tech connecting with me is it's just not consumer vehicles and even fleet vehicles that's driving electrification. It's so many other of the transportation modes that we have available to us and will have available to us. And bridging into XAI, if humans aren't going to invent anything anymore and AI is going to be our invention engine, maybe those two come together and we see electrification happen faster than we've talked about on this podcast.
I'll be darned.
There
That's pretty cool. That's a good one.
He just brought it full circle.
Full circle. Jeff does that. He's that kind of guy.
Man, I'm all for the electric airplanes too, or at least like the hybrid.
This Horizon Aircraft's pretty bad.
Especially all these celebrities like
Looks
Taylor
pretty cool.
Swift that always get dragged for taking their private jets everywhere, like they're supposed to fly commercials somehow.
Yeah, like that would work.
Think about that. That'd be awesome if like these celebrities get on board with this and be like, hey, I have to fly private still because I don't like to be harassed every second of the day.
Yeah, right.
But I'm doing it on a hybrid or electric jet now or something.
Yep.
That's pretty neat.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's a good one. That's a good one.
All right, Dean, what's tech connecting with you?
Well, I'm going to bring this all down a little bit here. Would you agree that there's many things to worry about when you think about causes of death?
Yes.
Like, you could get run over by a train or shot or fall off a cliff, right?
I'll be honest, the train one is not something I think about too often.
Okay,
I
that's
tend
fair.
not to be near train tracks much. But,
you can add one to the list,
Okay.
and that would be space junk. Space junk falling out of the sky. Now, I'm a fan of space entrepreneurialism, right? I mean, I don't mind all these satellites and all this stuff going up there, but apparently stuff is starting to fall out of the sky. And who is the culprit? none other than my favorite punching bag, the International Space Station. Yes, apparently
the rapidly falling apart International Space Station.
Apparently, they did a repair and they pushed off, these components, this pretty big section of the station. Yeah. And calculated that it was supposed to burn up in the atmosphere. Well, apparently most of it did, but it's a 1.6 pound metal object that crashed through the home of Alejandro Otero and almost killed his son. Yeah. So, and they crashed, through the roof, through the ceiling, all the way into the ground. So there's pictures of it and stuff like that. So the scientists miscalculated
just a bit.
But then, that kind of opened the door to some of the other space junk that apparently is falling, like China. Right. There's been a couple things that they thought was going to burn up, didn't really burn up. There's just all now that when you look at the history, there's actually quite a bit of space junk that's like falling down. So anyway, I just wanted to add to your anxiety and give you yet another thing that you should put on your list.
I'm going to be honest. I'll put that one's going to be fairly low on the list.
Oh yeah, it's low.
I mean, because I feel like it's one of those things that I probably won't see coming if it happens.
Yeah.
If something just comes barreling out of the sky and hits me in the head and kills me, like
there. Let's make it instantaneous.
I probably won't know what happened. Yeah.
Jeff, are you in Florida? Not to divulge where you are, but in general, are you in Florida?
Not right now. I'm in Washington, D.C. I'm inside the strike zone, so I'm probably safe from space junk.
Well, I was going to go down the path. I thought you had a place in Florida or whatever.
I do.
There's all kinds of rockets being launched there. Hey, you might want to get a little dome over your home or whatever, Space junk
but they probably protect their own, though. They're probably we make sure that the trajectories never reach us here where we are in Florida. It could hit some random Midwest town or something, but not us. So.
Let it fall in Iowa. Yes, there you go. So what's TEConnecting with you, John?
Mine's pretty simple, actually, which is that for the first time in 13 years, I finally upgraded our washer and dryer in our home recently.
What? Okay.
So I got
kudos for getting 13 years out of your previous
one. That's true.
Go
honestly,
ahead.
Probably could have got a few more, but it was, it was getting to that point where, it was time.
Yeah.
So we upgraded to some LG models, got the nice front load. And from a tech perspective, there's lots of little bells and whistles, many of which I don't necessarily know that I absolutely needed.
Yes.
Or care that
but
much about.
But it came with it.
I don't need the washer to play some Vivaldi for me when it's done. I'm not saying I didn't.
You can select
I'm not saying I didn't pick it and that I don't kind of like it. It's cool. It's not necessary. Or that when I turn it on, it says hello and shows me a nice little spring vista or something on the screen.
See. Yes, very nice.
So there's a lot of little stuff that is kind of unnecessary but fun. But what I will say I have been loving about it is the app.
And of course it
honestly,
has an app.
For the most simplistic of reasons, which is I love that it tells me when a wash cycle or a dry cycle is done.
Oh, okay. So the who is a Vivaldi is not loud enough that you can hear it.
It's in the laundry room.
Is it 8-bit, by the way?
If I'm not exactly, kind of, sort of, yeah. Exactly. It's just like tones kind of thing. If I'm not in the living room or the kitchen right nearby, or if I've got my AirPods in or something or whatever, and I get that notification, I'm like, oh, hey, it even does the thing too, where especially on the washer side, where it'll ping you. And then if you don't get the stuff out within 5-10 minutes, it'll give you another ping saying hey, your stuff's in there. It's not good to leave your stuff in the washer this long. And as someone who has occasionally left something in the washer overnight,
yes,
and had to,
who hasn't done this?
Felt like they had to run another quick, cycle or whatever to freshen it up before I put it in the dryer. I very much appreciate that part of the technology.
I'll be darned.
Even though there's a lot of stuff,
even on the dryer, does it do that? Because we are, and I've been kicked off the laundry team at my house, so I only speak from what they talk about. But if you leave clothes in the dryer, then they get all wrinkled, and so they'll fluffify it. She'll run a quick 10-minute cycle to.
Yes, and there is
do that on your app too.
You do. There is a cycle,
and that is the official word, fluffify.
Yes, there is some kind of a cycle. I don't know if it's officially called fluffify. It should be.
Right.
But yes, there is a cycle that you can set it on where if you don't get the stuff out of the dryer, then every 10-20 minutes or something, it'll do a quick little spin, burst of heat just to keep stuff moving. Little steam if you need that too. So,
okay. Well, I thought you were going to say that it doubles as the dryer doubles as an air fryer or something along those lines. You're getting eco-friendly.
No, I didn't get quite that high tech. But I just appreciate that it's making the process go a little smoother
little
and
bit more
faster, and
efficient,
then I don't
yes.
tend to forget about it for hours on end. So.
All right, fair enough.
And John, maybe there'll be an upgrade where you can have Pavarotti sing to you and say your socks are clean.
There you go. Exactly.
Your socks are clean.
Exactly. That sounds like a tool for AI right there.
There it is.
Give me the AI generated Pavarotti singing to me about
No, a deep
my
fake
clothes.
of Pavarotti. Yes.
Exactly. There you go. All right,
good
that is what's tech connecting with us. Jeff Smith with EVerged. Thank
Thanks,
you so
Jeff.
much for being on the pod today. Hey, if you liked what you heard about Jeff's stuff, or email us TEConnect@BlueStarInc.com. Be happy to put you in touch with
Absolutely.
him if you want to start getting involved with this
That's right.
stuff.
That's right.
Don't ask us. We're not going to have the answers.
Good Lord,
We'll
no.
get you over to Jeff.
Yeah,
It will.
yeah,
So it is time for us to unplug. Until next time, go out and find yourself a hybrid airplane to fly in.
There you go.
Ride on a EV Zamboni.
And duck.
Look out for space junk while you're getting to your washing machine.
Yes.
And as always, folks, please stay connected. TEConnect Podcast is brought to you by Elo. Dean, everyone loves a self-service kiosk, right?
Absolutely, we do.
But when you put one outside for, let's say,
outside.
ticketing,
Yes.
fueling charging stations,
You got
EV
issues now.
stations,
Yeah, there's weather.
wayfinding, vending. Yeah,
Holy moly,
there's
yeah.
stuff going
Yeah,
out there.
yeah.
Not just any display is going to hold up to that job.
Wait, you got a solution?
I do. Well, Elo does.
Oh,
I mean,
yes, of
it's not me. That's where Elo's outdoor open frame touchscreens come in. They are purpose built for ease of integration into an outdoor kiosk enclosure. The 90 series offers a brilliant optically bonded weatherproof open frame monitor with edge to edge glass. You can mount it in landscape, portrait, and upward facing orientations, providing optimal flexibility for integrating into any counter, kiosk, or cabinet design. To provide unmitigated performance from day to night, there's an ambient light sensor
Nice.
that automatically adjusts the display's brightness to optimize power consumption, extend the display's life, and enhance the viewing experience. Now available in 27 and 10-inch sizes, these touchscreens have built-in thermal protection, extended operating temperatures, direct sunlight readability, and are Energy Star 8.0 certified. They figured it out.
They got it.
They got
Absolutely.
all covered there.
Yes, sir.
Good display to use outside. To learn more and check out spec sheets for both size options, visit the link in the show notes or contact your BlueStar Elo representative.